In this video, I summarize what I believe is a very important European law about data. It is simply called the Data Act. I'll discuss how data has become more a part of our lives in record fashion, what questions that data involvement raises, examples of past/current data laws, and a knee-deep dive into what the Data Act is all about. Let's go. If there is one thing that has exploded in relevance and usefulness, it is the massive proliferation of data. Nearly every electronic device that has been manufactured in the last decade or longer generates and/or stores data. As what normally happens when a new service, trend, or phenomenon appears, standards and regulations grow out of the entity, as we usually can't immediately foresee certain consequences or challenges that will emerge as a result of the new shift in our world. Questions surrounding this ocean of data that we find ourselves in have included items such as who does the data belong to, especially if there are multiple contributors to the same file, photo, or other entity. What data laws apply if the data is stored in a server in another country but the company, group, or person who make, edit, and contribute to the data are in another or more than one country? In the US, there are various industry and/or topic-specific legislations that play to govern data use, such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA, Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, or GLBA, which governs financial institution handling of information, Fair Credit Reporting Act, or FCRA, which, as implied, has to do with credit reporting. There are other regulatory statutes as far as other topics as well. In the European Union, the biggest data protection legislation for sure is the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR. It is one of, if not the most, comprehensive and people-friendly data protection regulations to date. It includes key points on the accuracy and security of data, confidentiality, processing, consent, and many other key areas of emphasis. I say this humbly as an American patriot, but my own country should construct its own governing legislation on data protections. I'll digress on this point and leave it up to the US government to hash this out, but hopefully this ends up from pen to paper sooner rather than later. More to the point, the EU has created a new law to strengthen their data market and create a platform for responsible and secure data use and sharing. Basically, the EU has realized, as stated previously, that the astronomical growth of data needs to be harnessed and guided properly to achieve the best outcomes. Facets of these provisions include: it defines the data holder, usually the company that creates a product or service that generates data, and the user, normally the person who is using the product or service that has been built by the data holder. It integrates with existing data protection statutes such as the GDPR and also seeks to protect trade secrets of data handling companies, even in situations when data must be shared with a third party. It dictates situations when businesses must share data with each other and includes provisions to where a data holder can request payment for making data available to another party. It includes protections in the event that contracts between two entities may be unfair and processes on how to resolve said situations. It elaborates on how data sharing will happen in the event of both emergency and non-emergency situations. For the greater good, in other words, in case of disaster, pandemic, cybersecurity incident, etc. It demands that there be a common mechanism available for customers who use data storage and processing services to switch from one provider to another, and that the process of switching be made available at no charge to the customer. I personally think that is an amazing inclusion. It constructs proper digital boundaries and protections when it comes to sharing data to entities outside the EU. Specifically, the third party's country of residence must have a robust enough data governance apparatus, or the data will only be transferred if conditions for transfer meet certain criteria. Basically, the law emphasizes that the data protections that exist in the EU will follow the data outside the EU. It lays the groundwork for what the EU calls Common European Data Spaces. I'll call it CEDS. Think of these data spaces the way one would think of the road system in your country. The roads are made of a common material, asphalt, gravel, tar, etc., that vehicles can drive on, are maintained to ensure safety and efficient traffic flow, and are properly policed and monitored to identify opportunities for repair and expansion when needed. CEDS underpin the data roadway and infrastructure that the Data Act's provisions, restrictions, and allowances will all drive on, if you catch my drift. It mandates that each member of the EU will have one or more people in place to lead their country in implementing the provisions required in the Data Act. In summation, the Data Act in the EU seeks to unify their entire data infrastructure under this legally standardized set of rules and common practices. Not that this post is intended to be an opinion piece, but I thoroughly agree with the fairness and completeness of this legislation, and think that other countries should either adopt this document in its entirety or build their own set of data standards modeled after it. As to whether that happens is up to the rest of the world, of course. What do you think of this new legislation? Is it good? Is it bad? Do you have reservations about the entire document or only parts of it? Feel free to share what you like, don't like, or start a new conversation in the comments if you wish. Thanks for watching, commenting, and sharing.